Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Laura Ortman.
Okay, welcome everyone. Just really thrilled for today's session. So this is our EWLN session, our Equinix Women Leadership Network. And we're just so honored and excited to have Jeanne Bliss here with us. So before I ask Jeanne to come up on the stage, so we've been working with Jeanne for the last 2.5 years, and I've had an opportunity to really get to know Jeanne as a leader, as an executive, as an author, as a consultant. I mean, you put a title, it's Jeanne Bliss. She's just been really so wonderful to work with. So let me just give you a little bit of background on her experience. So she's an author and a customer experience guru. She is the CX guru. For over 20 years, she led customer experience at Land's End, Coldwell Banker, Allstate, Microsoft, and Mazda. Jeanne has been working with us as well as other companies going through CX transformations, really through her firm Customer Bliss. And she has inspired audiences across the nation, and every day I think she's on a new stage, so we're just very honored to have you here, Jeanne. So come on up. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Jeanne. Okay, all right, so Jeanne and I will be really just spending some time talking about just really 3 key areas. So just Jeanne's experience from a CX, customer experience perspective, Jeanne's experience as a female executive, and we've been really focusing on a lot of diversity and a lot of work that we're doing across Equinix, across EWLN. And then we're going to talk about her book, which everyone should have a copy of right here. Right? So how many of you have read her book? Because I know we sent a lot of copies.
Wow.
Yay. All right. So
how many will soon read the book? All right.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So would you do that to your mother? Yes, everybody is committed. So I thought we would start really just to talk about CX,
Sure.
Jeanne. And you're a recognized leader in the industry, whether you look on LinkedIn, Twitter, I follow you, and you just have just a wide variety and a huge audience that you inspire every day. But what inspired you around your passion for customer experience?
Well, so thanks for that. In my family, I'm known as the Italian blabbermouth. So, humanity is important and really staying humble in all of this. But I came from a family of 7 kids. You'll hear a little bit about it if you read the book. When you read the book, you'll hear more about my family. And my dad owned a Buster Brown shoe store. And all 7 of us sat at his knee learning about humanity in business. And it was things like when women would come in and bring their babies to get their very first pair of shoes from my dad. And he would take care of the tiny little toes, but also the life. And he shoed a generation of children and their children's children. And, he was the guy making sausage in the back because he couldn't leave the store. And if you were hungry, he brought a fork of food out to you. And if you didn't have enough money, he said, get those shoes on your little one's feet, you come back. And so we were all raised with this whole ability and watch this man nurture relationships. And while he might not have been the world's biggest merchant, he was beloved. When he retired, a line of people 3 blocks long stood to say goodbye to this man. And so that was really how I grew up. We all had to wear a Buster Brown costume. Does anybody remember Buster Brown? Who can sing the jingle? I'm Buster Brown, I live in a shoe. Here's my dog Tig, he lives in there too. Laura's like, come on. Anyway.
It's the passion. It's the passion.
So, 7 Italian kids with the blonde page boy wig and big bow tie, it's humanity. And so I went to school and had, after school, about 2 years after school, had this great opportunity. I answered an ad in the Chicago Tribune to go train 2,500 phone operators at a little company that was growing at the time called Land's End. So I got there, we were 100 million in sales. I stayed till we were over $1 billion. I spent a year training the phone operators, and then the founder, Gary Comer, said, hey, you, because I kept peppering him with questions, you come, we're growing 80% of the year, you're the conscience of our company. Your job is to course correct us, a la the mom lens. There's conscience all over this book. Course correct us. And so I was hooked. I found what my dad did in a small ecosystem and was able to learn it in business and in commerce. And I call it congruence of heart and habit. And that's really what this book is about. You feel it here at Equinix. When you are at a place where you can stretch and there's congruence of heart, who you are and who you were raised to be, and habit, what you're enabled to do and be at work, you find a home. And I found a home there. And I was hooked, and I stayed there for 10 years. And then I had to grow up and leave the nest. And then I deliberately kept changing industries. I went to Mazda. They were bringing out the Miata, zoom, zoom, right? And I thought, wow, we could wrap an experience around that Kaizen. Then I went to Coldwell Banker. Is this too much?
No,
went to
love it.
Are you guys bored? And then I went to Coldwell Banker because I wanted to run the field, and so I was in charge of all of the field in B2B. And then I knew I needed big, so I went to Allstate, and I reported to the president. I was the first VP of the personal lines company. Again, usually the only woman in the room, and the only great benefit of that is no line in the bathroom. Then I went to Lands End, Mazda, Coldwell Banker, Allstate, and then finally needed technology. So I went to Microsoft, and I was the first general manager of worldwide customer and partner loyalty. And then I was done with the corporate stuff and started writing books. The first book I wrote came out in 2006 called Chief Customer Officer. It's the book I wish I had had on my desk when I was pushing that rock up the hill, because this work is weird and you feel like you need to be locked in a rubber room sometimes. And then my mission was to help other people doing this work. And so that's what I've dedicated myself to. That's why I'm an Italian blabbermouth, because I'm a giver. And I feel that the way people like me grow is by giving. If my content is valuable, we will be magnetized toward each other, and when you need help, you'll think about me because I helped you first, like my grandmas with their bag of groceries, which is in that book as well. So that's it. Oh, and I co-founded the Customer Experience Professionals Association, just something else because I was bored. And so this is my fourth book.
Well, love it. Love your journey. And, I know you spent a lot of time talking to CX leaders as well as chief customer officers. Maybe just tell everyone, where do you see CX, kind of the state that customer experience is in right now across, the industry?
Well, I'm a little afraid. I can just tell you that, because whenever something becomes super popular, CX, we can lose the heart of it and the meaning of it, and it can very easily turn into work streams and tasks and red, yellow, and green dots. And the whole purpose of CX, of customer experience, it's leadership. It's choosing how you will and will not grow. Will you honor your employees? Will you redesign what you do to improve customers' lives and start with their goals? And yes, there's metrics and competencies and work streams, but at the end of the day, we need to keep talking about the life of the customer and the life of the employee. And my fear is that it will become too much of a program. It will start to feel like accounting. No offense to the accountants in the room, but I love the accountants, but it's got to continue to be about the passion place of an organization. The world's best companies don't lose sight. They continue to tell the story of customers' lives. So that's probably my biggest fear.
Okay. And, we have folks here in the room, and we have people dialed in from all over the globe here. And, we talk about everyone plays a key role in customer experience. But maybe, how would you describe the role, whether, you're an employee or you're trying to drive customer value and just the overall success of an organization in driving a better customer experience?
Well, it's interesting because what's on the inside shows up on the outside. And I've almost started calling it X now. Now, it's not customer experience. It's really the whole ecosystem of your organization, and are you united? We have these things in our companies called silos that are built for a reason, because we need to be good at a set of things. But in our zest to be good at a set of things, we inadvertently are building this set of things separately, and the customer's the only one falling in between the Bermuda Triangle of these silos, hence the reason for a period of time for a chief customer officer and the customer experience work. But over time, it should be organic and be built like you're doing back into, in many ways, the dynamics and the competencies of the business. So I think the other thing is we need to give people, all people, a seat at the table. Someone like Laura, her job is to shine a spotlight. Her job is to develop skills. Her job is to embed and give people the ability to have a cross company, a cross custom. Don't you love the lace? It's so good, right? You can really. Oh God!
Do you want to tell people you're? You know.
I'm a snorter. Yeah, yes, I snort.
All right. Just to warn everybody.
Yes. Does your wife snort? Yeah. Yeah. So my maiden name is Lombardo, and all the Italian women in my family snort. On stage last week, I was at the Mirage in front of 3,000 people. I told them it was because I was at Land's End in my early days in Wisconsin with the pigs. It's a better story. But yeah, I snort. So every once in a while, if I think something's funny. But does that make sense? I think it's really about think about how many people in the organization really have a comprehensive view. Even the CEO doesn't necessarily have a comprehensive view until we knit it together, because you're presented by silo. Their KPIs, their red, yellow, and green dots, their achievements, which are all well and good, but we need to find a different way to build. Build comprehensively, then break it into its pieces, versus starting with the pieces, and this is an Italian word, munging it together, and that becomes the experience. So I think that's really the work.
Okay. And you conduct regular podcasts with chief customer officers.
I do.
And if you haven't had an opportunity, I love listening to them. But
it's called the Human Duct Tape Show.
That's right.
Yes.
Human Duct Tape Show. What has surprised you the most of what you've heard from chief customer officers?
Well, what people are always shocked at is the amount of sharing that our community does with one another. And I have always said this is a very interesting job. In most cases, it hasn't existed. Well, you had a predecessor, but most people don't have. Are you okay? Okay. In most cases, it hasn't existed before. But what was the question? I lost my train of mind.
So you do a lot of podcasts with CCOs.
Right,
what
yes.
has surprised you from what you've heard from them and what they've shared in these podcasts?
It's really fearless sharing. We stand on the shoulders of the people who came before us. And I deliberately make the podcast not about broadcasting your successes, but broadcasting your journey. What worked? What didn't work? How did you re-navigate? How did you stop and pause? The work is interesting, but what really drives the work is culture. I call it the underbelly. How did you navigate the underbelly of your organization? And I think the joy that everyone has gotten from sharing. And also it's such a joyous thing for me at this point in my life. I'm 59. I'm on the whatever path. I don't know where I'm going after this. But, it's just so much fun to keep giving and figure out a way to give. And people get so much from hearing others going through it. And it's fun, and I get to snort at people. So it's great.
Right, excellent. Okay, last question around customer experience. So everybody plays a role in customer experience.
Mm-hmm.
How can we, everyone in this room and on the phone, how can we impact the customer experience in our roles every day?
Well, that's part of the reason I wrote the Mom book. It's good. That was a softball, wasn't it?
Oh, it was good.
Yeah. In each of our roles, in each of our work, you're going to be involved in projects and in the work that you're doing, but you also can take personal accountability. The point of the mom question goes all the way back to Gary Comer telling me I was the conscience of the company at Land's End in 1982. And the point of this is I'm offering you a simple question. Ask yourself, if you're on the front line, you can't change a policy, but you can adjust your shoulders and your attitude and the way you deliver, even a no. And ask yourself, would I do that to my mother? All of you in the middle of the organization figuring out the onboarding or a return. Think about the spaghetti bowl you're creating. Would you do that to your mother? Would you cause your mom to go through those things? And for leaders, it's about making decisions about how you will grow. We've all lived through gotcha moments where fine print exists, and suddenly it's like some hand comes out of the paperwork and says, gotcha, and there's a $10 fee you didn't know, or whatever. Think about those things. Are you willing to earn short-term money for a long-term potential loss of customers' goodwill and their feeling about you? Because that feeling really grows and drives if people are going to be your advocates and if they're going to find you good to be the kind of good people that are, again, congruent to how we grew, to how we raised. So I think we can take personal accountability, and then I think the other thing is get involved, be involved in these projects. And here's the thing that's really interesting. We all need to check our ego and our silo at the door, because we're very proud of the work we've done, and you should be. This is about embracing the past to advance the future, but sometimes the work we've done is perhaps competing with somebody else's work, or perhaps not built from the customer's point of view. And so we need to be willing to step back. There's that exercise we do when we do the customer experience journey work, where we have, some of you were probably involved in that, where we rate the reliability of the stages of the customer journey. And from the customer standpoint, 5 or 6 parts of the organization or silos need to be involved. But if you're only rating your own part of it and saying, we're great, then you're not really stepping back and looking at it from the customer's point of view. And that's a shift. I think that's hard to do.
Yeah. Great. Okay, so we've talked about your journey, your background, highly successful, not only as an executive, but as an author, and I know you've got more that you want to do. But let's talk a little bit about your personal journey.
Okay.
And so, what gave you the courage, Jeanne, to take a leadership role in really changing the business and this type of role for female executives?
Somebody was asking me a question about fearlessness. And what's weird is, so I grew up in Des Plaines, Illinois, in this little Chicago suburb, and we clearly didn't, 7 kids in one Buster Brown shoe store. You do the math. So we didn't have a lot of affluence at all, but we had this chutzpah, we had this spirit, and we had to clean our rooms, and we had to, and one day we were washing the Woody station wagon, and we were all full of suds, and, it was the whole thing. And it was around the time when all the men were going up in space and all this other stuff, and lots of things were happening. We would sit in the backyard and watch Neil Armstrong walk on the moon, and we had a hanger on the top of the TV to get the right reception. Does anybody remember sticking it? You guys are too young. Right, only the old people in the room remember that. But my mom said to me, what was cool about this is I didn't even know there was a glass ceiling, because she said, you can be an astronaut. And I thought, okay. And then at some point in time in my career, I thought, people are going to be vice presidents. Why not me? So I think it's just, plus I'm just, brat. I just don't think I have any boundaries, But I think some of that is about what gets instilled early on, and, being fearless and just keep moving and not knowing there's even a wall or a ceiling or whatever to fall down on top of you.
So Jeanne, who were your role models and mentors throughout your career?
I think I kind of call my dad Geppetto. He's just this lovely little wonderful person. My mom too. We'll talk about the women in my life were very strong. Certainly Gary Comer at Land's End, because he, for me, created the ability for me to, and I'm 24 years old, and I'm reporting to the executive committee of Land's End. So these people, when you join a company early days, you guys know you're in the, are you okay? We have the dropsies today. It's okay. The other day I was at a big keynote, and this was actually challenging. A woman who was pregnant fell off her chair, and we had to stop the keynote. So I keep worrying bodies are falling every time I hear a thud.
So your mentors and your
yes,
role
thank
models.
you.
Yes.
I keep losing. And then I think it was every other person along the way that was willing to embrace who I am. I mean, I'm not easy, God bless my husband. The man is, I think I wrote in this thing, he deserves some kind of husband award. dealing, loving, admiring, encouraging, enabling a strong woman, that takes a strong human, whether it's another woman or another man. And I also have learned that if they don't get me, then I need to go somewhere and find people who do. Because there's always going to be people who don't get you if you're strong. They'll hold the mirror to themselves and reflect back on what they're not. Be who you are. My whole thing is I'm Popeye. I am what I am. So just be Popeye.
That's great advice.
I know that wasn't really mentoring, but
no, it was good. You talked about people that made an impact for you.
Who are your mentors, Laura?
Well, I would say I'll talk about my mom here shortly, but she was a mentor of mine, and my father is, my husband is the same, reason you are. And then I've had leaders and executive throughout my career that really made an impact for me, females and males. Yeah. But it definitely, those were critical points within my caure.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, because this work especially, people say, "What are you doing?" And I say, "I'm just sitting in my office making up stuff." none of this had existed before I had done most of it. So, okay.
Yeah.
So, it takes a lot of guts to believe in that.
Okay, so speaking of career advice
Yes, ma'am.
and mentorship, when you meet young women who are early on in their careers, what advice do you give them, as they go through their journey? And are you a mentor and to anyone that maybe you can share with us?
Well, I think the first thing is to first adjust your innards. Just know who you are. You gotta be centered, and it's hard because there's going to be a lot of things whacking away at your inner peace and your strength and who you are and your skills. But just believe in who you are, believe in your skills, and then I think the other thing is find your path. If you're passionate, I was lucky because I landed in the middle of this farmland and found my path, and I stuck to my path. But figure it out. You're passionate. What makes you giggle? Like, I'm 35 years into this, and I'm still, look at me. I'm happy about this work. Find your... Sorry. And I snort. But find your passion, find your path. And, I know a lot of us have to put food on the table, and we can't walk away from jobs. So if your primary job isn't making you giggle, find something on the side you can do that can make you giggle. There have been jobs where, insurance, for example, while I was doing CX work, it wasn't creatively the most, and that's when I started speaking and writing. Make sure you have an outlet for what really rings your bell as well. That was a little poem.
Well, I think we can really tell, how passionate you are and how much you enjoy your work. It really comes out. Yeah. So as you meet more advanced, women that have been throughout their career and they want to move through senior leadership, do you give them different advice as they're, as they've kind of in the last kind of phases of their career, but they want to continue to move up? What advice do you give them?
Well, we've talked. What did I tell you? No, I'm just kidding.
Be yourself.
To be yourself. Yeah. For me, a lot of what I do now is I coach people who are in these senior CX roles, men and women. And a lot of it for me is to help them, first of all, know what you're walking into, understand the environment you're walking into. So while I'm coaching them on who they are as people, it's giving them a deliberate path to, first of all, don't boil the ocean. Create clarity out of customer experience is everything and nothing. And then there's a lot of, once in a while, I'll coach someone out of leaving the environment they're in because the culture isn't right. There have been places where I've picked up my marbles and left because I did as much as I could in that environment with that leadership team and the culture. So it's really about the path, clarity, and then also how do you align with the rest of the people in the organization? Collaboration, which is an overused word, but really getting along and finding a way to either dance with the power core, which I talk about, or the rest of the people in the organization. Again, our work is to shine that spotlight. So how can you show up as the person bringing people together to enable others to shine? Sometimes leaders who are rising, if you're in a traditional silo thing, especially in the CX work, you think this is about my moment. It's not. It's about you're enabling it and then stepping into the shadows. And that is uncommon if you've been rising through the silos that way. So we have to do a lot of work on that. One guy I coached out of doing the work because he wanted it to be a me moment constantly.
So we're seeing an increased focus on inclusion and diversity.
Yes.
And there's a lot of work that we're doing, at Equinix around this area. And in your mind, what's the biggest challenges for companies to really move the needle in this area?
Well, I think it's around a number of things. There's a great quote in the new book under the second chapter, big chapter called "Don't Make Me Feed You Soap," and it's about, or actually it's in the first chapter, around check your bias at the door. And I think it's got to start with. Everybody says it's got to start with who you hire, but I think it's got to start with also what are the perceptions and unintended biases. We all inadvertently have wired-in biases inside of us, whether we want to have them or not. Certainly we saw what happened in the marketplace with certain organizations, but I think there needs to be an awareness, and then as you hire, certainly there needs to be that, but then people need to see behaviors to model. Leaders need to exhibit it and give people permission. The quote in the book is diversity, inclusion is being asked to the party. Diversity is being asked to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance at the party. So, I think there's a swath that's saying we're diverse, we're practicing diversity, but again, if it's a work stream and action items and it's not in the core of who you are, then it's a long journey.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we're going to move on to your book.
Oh, we're going to move on
or to your
book.
books. You can see all the books that
and we
Jeanne
didn't show
wrote.
your. We have to do your.
Yes, yes.
Are we doing
So
it?
within
Oh,
your
okay,
book,
sorry.
you had asked
I wanted to make sure.
Yes, I will click on it right now.
Okay.
But you, as part of your book, you asked several executives to share their story on their mom, and you asked me to share my story. And as difficult as that was for me to do, I knew that my mom would be proud for me to represent her as part of your Make My Mom Proud Moment website. And so for me, when I think about my mom and I think about what I've learned, and for us, she was really the moral compass of our family. She passed away 15 years ago, so that's why I'm referring to her in past tense. But she was, really the captain of our family. And for us, everybody had a role in the success of the family. And I say, every employee has a role in the success of Equinix and in the success of our customers. And, I use the term Together We Win, the TWW, if you haven't already seen it. But I truly believe that we all play a key part. And I learned that, from the best and from her. And so, the way that I think about how we support customers here at Equinix is very much like the way I was brought up. So thank you for asking me to be a part of that.
You're
and
welcome.
I've been, on the site, and I've read everybody's story. What a wonderful, movement that you've started. It's incredible to see everyone who have shared their stories. And we'll make sure we'll send the link to everybody, and you can share your story online. It's really incredible to see, how people relate to what they learned from their moms. So thank you for that.
You're welcome, and what a beautiful picture.
Yeah, so actually I have one in color, and it's called The Lady in Red, and it's red. And so my dad did a video of her. So,
beautiful.
Okay, let's move on. What inspired you to write this book?
Well, I again, in the spirit of giving, I wrote the first Chief Customer Officer book, and then I wrote a book that came out in 2009 called I Love You More Than My Dog. There it is, 5 Decisions That Drive Extreme Customer Loyalty. And it was very much, in a way, similar to the mom books. I write 2 kinds of books. One is, I think about as a beacon book, helping people to understand where they can take their organization. A book everybody can read, like the dog book, like the mom book. And then the CCO books are kind of the workbook and the guide to help people inside of the organization do the work, help with the underbelly of the work. The mom book, I think, is even more interesting and important now because it's about values. It's about, the dog book was around 5 decisions, which had values woven in, but what we know and what we all feel, I think, is more and more with social media, with the, so much high tech in our life, with the political and every other kind of environment we live in, everywhere around the world, we're gravitating again more and more toward those organizations and those people who connect with us from the values that we have. The biggest thing, though, beyond that, was I wanted to create a simple roadmap. Customer experience is becoming complicated. It's, again, we're all working on it hard, but my job is to break it down. So this book is the story of our life as customers. It's simple. There's cartoons. Because it's called Would You Do That to Your Mother? There's 32 case studies, each one followed with a mom lens to evaluate your performance and how you're doing, and then a Make Mom Proud-O-meter at the end where you can evaluate and do your quiz. But it's a toolkit. You can take this book apart. I'll be offering things on the internet, and you can start with one. You don't have to do all 32. It makes it accessible, consumable, and something every part of the organization can be a part of. And so I felt like I owed it back to our community to bring it down, simplify it, and also kind of give people some hope out there.
Great. Did you want to share some of the slides now? Would you?
Whatever you would like. Would you like to do
yes,
that?
I think
Okay,
that'd be
so we
great.
have a clicker here. Let's see
Yes.
what we got. So you guys, can you see it?
Yeah.
I heard a little clicky thing. This is really, at the end of the day, the work is about improving lives. And we've talked about that. I'm a broken record on that. And so what we'll walk through there's your mom. And this is the cover of the book. And what I think part of it is just, and we've talked about this, taking accountability that you, no matter where you are, can improve a life. You can improve the life of a fellow employee. You can improve the life of your customer. You can improve the life of the team. And that's really what this work is. And, at the end of the day, high tech is important, but it's the companies that connect high touch with high tech. Think about your own life. Yes, an app now, if we're lucky, can tell us when the cable guy will show up at our house, or kind of when he might show up at our house. But it's the man or the woman, and if they put those booties on their feet, and how they walk into your home and take care of your furniture, that show you the kind of mother this person's got. Yes, you can book your entire airline ticket online and not even talk to a human in the airport. But it's the woman or the man at the gate agent who honors you when your flight's a little late and you're worried, that tells you how she treats you based on if she herself is honored. And so I think that's really the other piece of this, is making sure that the pendulum doesn't swing too far, that technology alone. These are the women in my life. The woman on the far left, I actually have a pointer, but I'm not going to use it. This is my mom, Lydia, and she would, stay up all hours of the night making homemade Halloween costumes. Who does that anymore? And teeny tiny Barbie doll dresses for my sisters and I. And my grandma Ermelinda, that's my dad's mom. Am I Italian enough? I never saw the woman sit down at a meal. She would hover around the table, plopping food from behind your back, whether you wanted it or not, saying, manja, manja. And then my grandma, Virginia, again, so much of what we connect to them is food, but replace the word food with the word nourishment. Are we nourishing our customers? Are we nourishing each other? And, she would roll out dough every Christmas to make ravioli, and I saw her throw away mounds that maybe had a little ripple in it, that weren't perfect. And so, again, they were perfectionists, and they were selfless, and they thought of us first. These are the behaviors that really draw us to companies that we think kindly of, that we want to do business with, that have personal characteristics. So I wrote the book. When you all read the book, you'll notice in the case studies that it's your life. I've written the stories that we experience, broken into these 4 common things we interact with in companies. First of all, be the person I raised you to be. This is about enabling employees to bring the best version of themselves to work. But yet, who hasn't interacted with a policy cop? How many people have called an airline more than once? We accidentally hire good people, but then we accidentally bind them in. So this is about creating that joy. Don't make me feed you soap. This is getting rid of the things that make all of our life, think about it, waiting, fear, concern, not knowing, nobody's communicating with you. What are those things that what's your biggest soapy moment, Laura?
Well, it's interesting, as you were saying that, you mentioned the story of the 4-hour window, right? And in your book, you talk about, customer waiting. I think it was the cable guy, but the easiest
but it could
example,
be a lot of
right?
things.
And you've got the 4-hour window, and you always think, oh wow, they gave us so much flexibility because now they're giving us a 4-hour window. But for us, we always assume they're going to come in hour 1, right? So she assumed they were going to come, didn't hear anything, called the company, and they said they were going to text the technician, and the technician was going to, contact her. Here's nothing. In the 20 minutes before the time is up, he shows up, and she said, well, you were supposed to, be done. He said, well, no, I was supposed to just be show up. Right? And so we think, oh, wow, they gave us this window, but it's actually an inconvenience for us. And it's just the companies you said in your book, the companies have done that to make it easier for them to schedule, right? So we've made it easier, for our company, so let's put the pain on the customers. And we talk a lot about that.
So are you running on customer time or company time? Yeah. So this whole thing is these moments that, have you ever felt like when you're about to call a company, you have to prepare? You kind of have to put your dukes up. Why? Why are we doing that to people? Yuck. And then the poor people, whether it's your frontline salespeople or your folks on the phone or somebody processing, we're putting them in a position of, again, that's incongruent, right? So it all kind of feeds. So then this one is, I know a lot of the work you're working on now, which is redesigning. And this is about starting with your customers' goals. It's interesting that the best companies grow by starting with understanding the customer's goal and building to help them meet their goals. So what's a good example of something you've been doing? You have all those great projects.
Well,
that
I
you're
mean,
redesigning.
as part of our customer journey, so we talk a lot about the buying experience. And I think, for us, we get a lot of feedback on billing, right?
Yep.
And what
everybody
we think,
does.
Right, everybody
billing.
does. And what we think makes sense to us, our customers are saying, well, I'm having to call 4 or 5 people at Equinix versus working with one person.
That's right.
And we think we've made it convenient, but actually we've put more onus on the customer.
Right.
So to me, those are the things that we're driving as an
That's
organization.
Right.
Everybody has a role in it. But,
and there's
but
a story in the soap chapter that's called Don't Put the Monkey on the Customer's Back. I mean, every time you call a company to get help, what do? They give you homework. You're giving people homework to get done what you need. So it's, again, this shift. And the way these case studies are written, we'll walk you through, I think it makes it simple. Take the high road is just get rid of the rigmarole. The stuff that your mom would be proud of if you got rid of. Fine print, a pen chained to a bank. Why? Like, what? Also, there's a comic that says, would you put your mom in a windowless office, negotiate with her for hours, give her fuzzy math for her car trade-in, and then, tell her this is all she can pay per month? Well, you would never do that to your mom, but how many have had that experience in buying a car, right? I mean, it's this crazy stuff. So it's your selling process, it's your paperwork, do a trust audit across all of your paperwork. And I think you're working on all of your communication, because simple communication can be trusted more. You know why? Because in the simplicity, there's nowhere to hide. There's no jargony words. There's no gobbledygoo. It's a very technical word. But simpler, shorter, clearer language means, wow, they thought about that. They're talking like I am. Yeah. So those are the 4 big categories of the book. So what I thought we would do is we'll pop up a few cartoons in each of these chapters and just talk about them.
Yeah.
Okay. So would you roll your mom into a hospital hallway and just leave her there? Well, no. But this is about caring. So the question that we challenge in organizations is, are you building a one company, a united organization that no matter who your customer talks to, they feel like this person can take the time to care about me. And they care about me. They care about what I'm going through. In this scenario, if you've had somebody in a hospital or a family member, right? You've gone through this, right, Laura? Tell us about any experience you've had.
Well, actually, my experiences have been very positive. I've always been impressed through my life experiences of nursing. But I have seen people, I mean, that's a great one, because I've seen people, you walk the halls of a hospital and they're just laying there. There's nobody there and there's no communication to the family. And so to your point, communication, ongoing communication is better than no, because they might think something's happening. But you kind of see it, and you see it so much you don't even think about it.
Right.
Right.
So, and this happens to be the case study on this is Cleveland Clinic, and what's fascinating about Cleveland Clinic is Toby Cosgrove, their CEO, in 2010 said, and this gets right back to everybody, we're really efficient, but we haven't, processes that we create for our efficiency don't necessarily wire the human life into them, right? We're ticking boxes, we're getting stuff done. And so Toby Cosgrove said to his entire community, customers come here because we're good at what we do, but they don't like us very much. And so they created a series of actions. One was a no passing rule. What did you think of that?
Remind me what that.
So the I don't mean to put you on the spot. So the no passing rule is sometimes a simple rule unites behavior and gives people permission. So the no passing rule is if there's someone in a bed in their hospital room and their call light is on, no one can walk by that room. Whether you're a therapist, somebody delivering flowers, a janitor, a doctor. So what's your version of the no passing rule? Where will you implement something in your company where no one can be handed off? People need to own it. And so I kind of love that. So that could be an interesting one.
Yeah.
To think
no, I
about.
think that resonates with a lot of people here. Yes.
And then they went on and did a couple other things that you could read about. But again, the notion is care isn't going to happen automatically unless you give people permission. I talk about it as when you raise the water table of what people are accountable for and shift what their role is. So the other thing they did was they changed everybody's title from therapist, flower deliverer, janitor, et cetera, to caregiver. Now, in the past in healthcare, only doctors had that title. So what should everybody here be called? A peace of mind artist? I don't know. But when you give people clarity of what you're all banding to do, people will rise to that. They'll be creative. They'll take initiative. So here you can just take a look at that. So this is about, would you tell your mom you couldn't help her without extending empathy to her first? Well, that will happen if you don't hire people deliberately. So in this chapter, this is really about hiring people deliberately. So, when you make a shift about who you will and will not be, it has to start with not only what leaders' behaviors will be, but as you bring in new people, what they'll really stand for and who you'll look for. And the whole idea behind this is hiring the human behind the resume. We all have skills, but who are we as people? Let's jar them out of the traditional interview where you can write great stuff. We're all smart. We're all good. But who are you as a human? So I know you're doing a lot of work from that standpoint, from the HR and the OD and development.
Looking at Deborah, do you see? She's
yes,
helping us
Deborah,
lead
do you
this
want
effort.
to share anything? You don't have a microphone, but we have handheld mics.
I have a doozy of a question for you, so I'll share it during that.
Okay.
So in about 4 minutes we'll open it up for
okay.
Q&A.
So we need to keep moving.
Yes.
This one is about creating memory makers. Everybody has the opportunity to deliver a memory. So again, regardless of what your role is, I said at Allstate, for example, yes, you may have to turn somebody's claim down, but you can do it by leaving somebody's dignity intact. The story here is everywhere around the world, the window washers dress up as superheroes, and they rappel down the windows of kids' hospitals right in front of them.
That's cool.
And don't you love that story?
Yes.
And it makes their day almost more than it makes the kids' day. So some soapy moments. Communication, we talked about that. When the lights go out, or the equivalent of the lights going out for your customers, are you there? Do you reach out for them before they reach out to you? Because when people are afraid, worried, and concerned, the texting starts, the calling starts, the worry starts. Do you know before they tell you that the lights are out? So it's that whole recovery system. Anything you want to add there? Should I just keep moving?
No, you're covering it.
I'm
great.
on a roll. I know
Yes.
we only have 4 minutes, right? Would you send your paperwork to your mother? Right? Would you make your mom keep reintroducing herself to you? How many of you call a company, have to remind them who you are and how much you bought, etc. Put others before yourself. What's your role? Is there something that can unite everyone, or is your clarity around internal? I know, right? I not only wrote a book, we had to write cartoons. Would you turn down your mom's warranty claim 3 days out of warranty, or do you? I know, do you like the DeLorean comment? Or what does it say? I feel awful that you're just 3 days out of warranty. If I had a DeLorean, you could go back for the extended warranty. But this is about what I call letting policy and the golden rule collide. And this is leadership bravery. You already know the top vulnerable moments in your customers' lives when things will go haywire. You already know when they do. Why not give your front line a set of tools and actions without touching a desk that they can take to put people back together again? Give them customer lifetime value. Train them on how to use it. Then trust them to honor the life. Changes everything. So take the high road. Trust. Read. Oh, there it is. Read all of your paperwork. I know. This is the paperwork, the pen chain to the bank. I still wonder, And then instead of giving you a pen, they give you like 20-year-old mints, right? What's up with that? But do a trust audit. Read everything you send to customers, and is there anything that says to them, we're protecting ourselves from you? Example here, has anybody heard of Lemonade Insurance? So this is a new insurance company. It's a startup, a disruptor. They started in New York, but they're now expanding to 60 markets because it's taking. They've gotten rid of the rigmarole. It's all based on trust. I know I need to talk fast.
No,
okay.
This is a good story.
Okay, thank you. So you sign up. They cover your furniture and whatever personal lines. They evaluate how much it's worth, and then they just charge you off the top 20% or whatever percent. So there's none of that, we don't know where their price came from. The next thing they do is they ask you to pick a charity, because the whole thing now is very mom-like. They're going to put us in a community where our conscience drives how we file claims and what we say some claim is worth. Because at the end of filing the claims for the year, whatever is left over, guess what, goes to everybody's charities. The next thing they do, this very mom-like thing, is when you file that claim, they have a bot, it's all mobile, AI Bot Jim. You look into AI Bot Jim and you have to say an honesty pledge and film it. I promise, AI Bot Jim, that the vase I broke is really only worth $20. It's 40 years old, blah, 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 so help me, whoever you believe in. And the beauty of this is that's a mom thing, right? Didn't you remember your mom? Look into my eyes and tell me that, right? So I love that. Trust given is trust received. We're going to skip this one. And then the last one is how you apologize. Not about the who, but the why. Why did it happen? To give your people dignity back. So you'll see employee is woven all throughout this, but leadership has to enable this to happen. At the Ritz-Carlton, for example, after every shift, they do a huddle, and they talk about the why, and they give the ownership back to the front line to make it right, to get the glory. So this just very simply is your 32 toolkits. Each of the stories starts with a comic, which I think you'll enjoy. Then case studies on one page, because we know what our ability to comprehend stuff is during our day. One story on the left, the mom lens to evaluate, hold that mirror to yourself on the right, and then the quiz is in the last chapter called Stop the Shenanigans. And lots of people are actually starting with the quiz to see where you are and then cherry picking the book. And then here is our Make Mom Proud page. So it's make-mom-proud.com, where I encourage you. I'm sure you're already doing something to make her proud in how you behave in business. Feel free, post her picture, why she inspires you, and that one thing you do.
It starts with one thing. I don't know why it doesn't